Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Monday, May 5th edition of the Daily Pulse. Happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody celebrating out there. One of the more festive days of the year, always a fun day. And of course, every day is festive here on the Daily Pulse as we take a look at the city of Lowell and the world around it. And today, it's going to be a Monday with Marty.
We're back.
We're back. Our special guest, former Lowell City Councilor Marty Lorrey, is with us, looking resplendent in his New England Patriots sweatshirt today.
It's raining, it's pouring, the allergies are gone. I died for Saturday, I did a show and people are texting in, take a drink of water. I got cough drops, water, nothing works. But we're good today.
All right. But, by the way, speaking of the Patriots, did you see the local kid on the Pirates from Chelmsford, Sal Lopoli Jr., is going to be at Patriots rookie camp
He is.
this week. He got an invitation. He showed up at some camp and impressed enough to get a tryout. We'll see how that goes and whether he gets an invite back to the regular training camp in July. But big step, a kid, I don't want to say undersized, but for pro football, he's certainly not one of the bigger guys out there. But when they start to measure heart, the kids,
You look
kids
at
got
the
it
new
all.
Patriot staff, the size isn't the big thing, it's speed.
Yeah.
Technique and speed, so we'll see.
Yeah, so congratulations to him, and we'll hear from the new Pirates head coach tomorrow. But now we're talking on the Daily Pulse. We got lots to talk about in the city of Lowell. Local election season heating up. Well, on the side of the stove where there's something cooking, it's heating up. The other side of the stove is really kind of cool right now. We're going to talk about that. Talk a little bit about the money in these races. And how it affects the races. We got school budget woes that we're going to start to talk about now because you're going to hear it dominating the political discourse in Lowell over the next couple of months.
Two of my predictions.
Yes, indeed.
We talked about it in January, and you said, what about the election season? I mentioned Belvedere and the Aiken. I said, other than that, yeah. Those are the two seats. Those are the two battle zones.
That are definitely the battleground. So we'll focus on all of it. Plus, we'll take a look at Washington, D.C. as stuff starts to trickle down here with Marty. First, let me thank my Daily Pulse sponsors. Ray Booten. He is a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. He is a certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, Ray Booten is your man. Find him online. realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. WellPoint is the only health plan offering health care benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thanks to Ray, thanks to WellPoint. We've got a bunch of other sponsors we'll thank as well in a few minutes. But all right, Marty, it's been, I think, like 3 weeks since we've last connected here.
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks.
The candidates are now starting to do their media interviews. I've had a couple here on Inside Lowell. You had a couple on Saturday.
We had a couple on Saturday.
Your talk show on CAP.
We've had two of the four candidates from Belvedere in. And Saturday, we also had Francisco Maldonado. I had Belinda Duran in a couple of weeks ago, and I was off for like a month because of holidays and whatever. And then this week we had Finn in. Dan Finn.
Yeah, he's the one guy in Belvedere I haven't gotten to yet. But
nice guy. I mean, really a good family.
He's coming in next week, as is Francisco Maldonado.
Yeah, Francisco was in.
8 against Johnny Dakota. Aaron Gendron was here last Thursday.
I saw the podcast.
I'll tell you what, generating a lot of traffic on our channels there. A lot of folks are watching that. She's also, I always tell the candidates, feel free to take that video, snip it up any way you like, use sound bites, whatever, as part of your campaign material.
Well, she's unknown.
She's done just that.
She's unknown. So I think a lot of voters don't know her or who she is. So they'll be watching closely. Same with Belinda Duran.
Interesting you say that, because the name Gendron is known in Lowell because of her father-in-law, Steve Gendron.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about this, but you're right. So people will say, okay, they see the name, but they don't necessarily know her unless they're avid watchers of the Board of Health meetings. But, so what's the biggest challenge for a challenger, a first-time candidate? Is it simply getting the name out there? Is it getting the message out there? When you ran for the first time, what was your biggest challenge?
It's name and face. cards, post. I was retired. I knocked over, I think, 5,300 doors. And I would get up on Monday morning, or every weekdays was 10 to, say, 1 knocking doors. Even if they're not home, leave a card with your name and picture and write, sorry I missed you. And then in the afternoon, back to, say, 2 to 4, and then 6 to 8. You have to knock doors now because it's bright till 7:30.
Sure.
Especially in Belvedere. This is going to be over in September. So you want to be out knocking now. But that's going out and meeting people. And everyone says, oh, you got to go to the different parties. You're better off knocking doors. They get to talk to you. They get to see you. You know, I gave one candidate a suggestion. I says, the difference between me and losing one year was probably 125 votes. And I go to church in 𝐾𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲. I said, if I went to the Immaculate, I probably would have won. And not that going to church wins it, but people see you. People see you oh, that's Marty Lorrey. That's this one. So they see you. They know you. And it's that name face. Now, I could be wrong, but it wouldn't have hurt the name and face.
I always wonder, like, is it simply you recognize the name from seeing them out and about, seeing the signs, seeing the door knockers or whatever? Or are people voting on issues?
Lowell's a popularity. Lowell's
no.
always been a popularity contest. That's why it's always name face. Once they're familiar with you, and you had 9 votes, and I think the average ballot is 5 votes. People vote 5 times. So if they're familiar with you, you know, people like Dan Finn. Dan was very involved in leagues. His kids graduated. We were talking about it Saturday. So his kids played sports. He sees a lot of people that way. They know him. They're comfortable with him. That's going to help him. And that's a big thing.
So that is for challenges. What about for incumbents? What's the key for them?
It's hard.
They're out there every single Tuesday. They're out there at the neighborhood meetings. It's a tremendous advantage. Even, you know, unless you had a specific issue, like, you know, the high school debate, obviously there was massive turnover, but very rare to see turnover.
Well, you know,
when the incumbents are seeking election.
The thing is, it's also issues, and you have a voting record now. When I was on, the university took over part of One Lancet, and they got rid of the methadone clinic. Now, because of what it does, it could go anywhere in the city. So it went out to Stedman Street, and it caused a havoc out there. But it could have gone to Westford Street. When I was on, there was a petition that went through Belvedere. I don't know, 900 people signed it to change the zoning on Route 38. That's a lot of signatures out of Belvedere. We want that changed. We didn't change it that night. Of course, we couldn't. It came before the council, and they put it off. Mysteriously, after the election, that never came up again.
Really?
Ballot questions are a big one. You see it statewide to get out the vote, but we've seen it here in this city to get it out a vote. And you look back at 2013, I think it was, that issue never came up again to change the zoning. I don't know anything about real estate, and I was sitting next to Eddie, and I says, Eddie, does it really affect the owners of the property? He said, yeah, Eddie does it for a living. He said, zoning.
Eddie being then city councilor
Eddie Kennedy, and Eddie's very good. Eddie's very smart. And Eddie said, yeah, these things can change. We put it to the side. Matter of fact, that night, the late Jimmy Flynn, who's an attorney in the city, who does a lot of work in real estate, Jimmy was there on another issue, and he got up and spoke against it. And I think he owned a piece of property there, too. So, but it never came back.
Interesting. You mentioned the districts that everybody is focusing on. Yeah. Belvedere, District 3, 4 candidates in that race.
Yeah.
The 5th has made it official to me that he's not going to be running. A gentleman by the name of Ronald DeBerto. So it's the Fantastic Four, as we'll dub them.
It's going to be a good race.
It's going to be a great race. 2 will be eliminated in the preliminary on September 8th.
I know, September 9th.
September 9th.
It's my anniversary. Because I know Jerry's going to say, we're going to do a show that night, right. And I'm going to say, it's my anniversary. I don't.
Well, you can come on in here if you want and do our coverage. The other one is the Acre. 3 people in the race. Paul Ratayem,
Yeah.
Sidney Liang, who will work on getting it here, and Cervantes, Jose Cervantes is coming. He's actually coming in here tomorrow with me, so we'll record a podcast introducing you to him as well. He's getting out there, so it looks like we have a preliminary election.
Those are the 2 I targeted in January.
You said those 2 races would be the ones that were being looked at
to flip.
for the challengers.
And, you know, a lot of people hold it against Corey. He took that seat without an election. Greg was on Saturday. You have him this week.
Greg Pappas,
ask him about that. I don't think they would have got an election off. I just don't think they would have. That's my own personal opinion. I personally called Corey and said, if you get those votes, take it, because the people who against you right now saying you shouldn't take it, if they get those 6 votes, they're taking it. Let's be clear. So I said to Corey, take it.
And there are, if you look at the fundraising events and kind of where people are lining up and supporting, there are folks that I would never have imagined would back Corey Bellinger.
Yeah, I
who
looked
now
at
that he's an incumbent are backing him, which is really interesting, which kind of shows you the power of incumbency, because you have the ability to deliver, right? If you live in a neighborhood and you say, hey, I got a problem with this, and the councilor gets it done, even if you didn't support them before, now suddenly, you know, it opens the door to that support. And I think that's the benefit he's getting, as having a year to be in that seat before the election.
There was also the manager's contract to extend it. Not everyone was happy with that.
Correct.
So now he's got that vote. We'll see what issues. If you're a challenger and you have the means, one of the things to do is get something before the council that would make the person look bad, that they're going to have to vote on. That the issue on 38, where that came from, I don't know, but it never came back after the election. There are issues like that. The methadone clinic, we don't have a vote on that, but sometimes board appointments. Jerry Nutter, look at what happened to poor Jerry. I mean, that turned into a fiasco, and there were probably 2 or 3 appointments that Lynch made, and that election was all about Bernie Lynch. It wasn't about me or anyone else. Some of his appointments were attacked and didn't get on. So, you know, these are the things the incumbents have to deal with.
Sure, but the challengers have to differentiate themselves. And that's what I'm going to be watching. Like you said, you know, the issue, again, the high school debate in 2017, there was an issue. District representation, et cetera, in 2019. What are the issues here? And are the challengers going to step forward and differentiate themselves? Or is everybody going to try to be popular and turn it into a popularity contest?
This is going to be interesting, because in 2017, you invited me to do the radio. You and I had a ball.
That was a great year to do radio.
We had a good time. But you had said 3 councilors would make it, and I said 3 challengers will. And I predicted Belvedere would come out over 60%. And that night, I think you sent me the total was 62 or 6. They did come out.
They're huge.
You're going to see that in this preliminary, because you have Corey. So everyone has a camp. Dan Finn has a camp. Corey has a camp. Duran has a camp. And Gendron, of course, the Gendron family has a camp. So you're going to see a get out the vote that will probably rival that 2017 race.
How will that affect, well, I assume there'll be some kind of a carryover of that in the general election as well, right? That will be a hotly, when you get down to the final 2, and even in the Acre, you get down to the final 2. Will that boost the citywide turnout, and will that start to affect, will it have any effect at all on the at-large race, which right now still looks like only 4 candidates on the council, and maybe there could be a competitive school committee race.
If I was close to Corey, I'd probably pat him on the back and say, Corey, run citywide, because
Corey Bellinger,
people who would want to vote for Corey won't, and there's going to be a huge turnout. Corey beat Resna Noon by, I think, 5 or 7 votes 2 years ago. Now, Corey was for Cawley, Vesna was for downtown. The ADU issue, again, there's another issue, the ADU that came up. It didn't help some of the incumbents. But Corey would probably piggyback such a huge vote in Belvedere. he would go pretty good citywide, and I think he might beat 𝐷𝐿𝐴 again in Belvedere. I mean, it's a hard decision, but Corey now fighting for votes in Belvedere would probably get those. You know what I'm saying? Instead of fighting for 40 or 30%. You're going to get probably...
Those are three strong incumbents, though, in the at-large race. 𝐶𝐚𝐲 𝐏𝐻𝐿 has a tall task because you've got... All of them have topped the ticket at one time or another. Rita Mercier many times, Vesna Noon multiple times, and last in his first crack, 𝐷𝐿𝐴 topped the ticket. So.
But, you know, to me, it would be an interesting discussion whether Corey should go citywide. He won't. He'll stay in Belvedere now. When you look at his fundraiser, he did very well.
But thank you for the segue. You actually you're starting to look at the money raise.
Already, yeah. I sent it to you yesterday.
What are we seeing now? Some of the candidates have yet to have their fundraisers. I know Erin Gendron says she's having hers today on
so you won't hear till June.
But you know, Belinda Duran I think had her first one. Corey Belanger had his first one. I don't know. Danny Finn has one scheduled.
He has one.
He was kind of the last person.
He brought it up Saturday on the show.
But what are we seeing from the fundraisers already? What are we seeing in terms of turnout? What are we seeing in terms of energy? And what are we seeing in terms of money? And does any of it make a difference?
I was blown away by Corey Belanger's first fundraiser. He over $8,000. Now
he told me that was the most he's ever raised in one campaign fundraiser.
Back. I mean, you can see it the receipts. In 1023, he raised $5,000, which is a lot for Corey. Even then. Corey was a candidate like myself and many others. You hope to make enough to have a mailing before the general election. Now he's got $8,000. Duran's got doing very well fundraising. You're going to have to do a mailing prior to the preliminary.
Sure.
And that's going to be expensive in Belvedere. I don't know how many... you can send out one to everybody, or you can send out one per family. We used to do one per family. But if you have the money, you send to everyone in the family. Now they go to the mailbox. There's 2 of them in there, 3 of them.
That seems like overkill.
No, it's name, it's face. It's name and face. And you're going to have to send out a mailing in that race. And I don't know what I didn't look back at the expenditures. Maybe Bill Samaras, Dave Conway, John Leahy, what they would spend for mailing in Belvedere. But you don't have to do citywide, so it is cheaper. But that will probably eat up $4 grand anyway.
One mailing.
I would
think
in
a district is about 4,000.
Well, in that district, yeah, because
and by the way, postage is a lot more today, than it was 5-10 years ago, right?
In Centerville and the acre, probably not much at all. Now, there's 2 ways you can do that. You can send out that mailing that's going to come out prior to the preliminary, but you also have to get lit. And I always tell people the same thing: face name, your face name, and don't put a lot on it because people aren't going to read it. You know, just highlight it, flash points. And so you're going to be door knocking. You're going to be putting that on if they're not home, on the door handle. And don't use the mailboxes. You can't use the mailboxes. Remember that. So you could get the door hangers and hang them on the door. But the key is all of these candidates will be knocking those doors. They'll go to the list of voters, not the voting list, but the purge list, people who vote. And they'll be hitting those doors, and then a mailing will come out. So, you know, you're going to be hitting them 3 times. Once, door knocking, maybe twice, and then a mailing. That's 3 hits per home.
What about surrogates knocking doors for you? Now,
good.
It's one thing if you're there as the candidate and other people are with you, because, you know, if I don't recognize somebody, maybe somebody I'm with recognize them, and so you make a connection. But what we've also started to see is some folks are sending the surrogates out. So is that more to the person at the house? Is it annoying to have somebody knocking on your door and it's not even the candidate?
A lot of times the surrogates, what they would do is just leave the lit, you know, just hang. I had that. I had volunteers, and they would just leave it. I would do the door knocking. Erin Gendron's father-in-law, Stevie Gendron. Stevie has a lot of friends in Belvedere. Stevie and his wife. They're going to be out knocking doors. And I'm sure they're going to be knocking doors. And her aunt, Billy Florence and his wife, very well liked in Belvedere. I mean, the Jennings are a big family. The sisters all went to St. Peter's, and they went to school with my sisters, and big family, well-liked family. And, yeah, so they're going to, in that case, yeah,
Okay.
it's going to help.
What's going on? We talked about the 3 districts that'll have a challenger right now. Still left kind of up in the air is District 4, the downtown district or the sausage district.
Yeah.
Is anybody hearing from Wayne Jeunesse? Is he going to seek re-election? And when I talked to last time I talked to Wayne, and admittedly it was months ago, he said he hadn't made up his mind yet.
He'll make up his mind for him.
Well, it was interesting that he hadn't, because most of them, I'm running if I'm healthy, blah, blah. He had said he hadn't made up his mind yet. So there's some doubt there, we would think. And now we're starting to get into, we're in May. It's May 5th. Paperwork starts getting pulled in June. Are we hearing anything? Is there any speculation of
Put it
that you're
this way,
picking up?
when I made that prediction that there's 4 votes that don't always go with the city manager, so they'll target 2 districts, Wayne's one of those votes. And the people back in Wayne are going to pat him on the back and say, Wayne, give it one more shot. They don't want to lose one of those seats. They want to hold on to that. Vesna's one. Vesna doesn't always vote with the city manager. And Wayne
He did vote on the contract extension once on the contract. The original vote to go ahead and extend the manager's contract, he voted no, saying it's not the right time.
Right.
But when the contract came up a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago now, he voted yes.
2 different votes.
Correct.
He didn't want to extend it, and that's fine. And we talked about that. You were trying to get me to say whether I would have supported or not. And that's a tough vote for a councler.
How would you have voted on the contract?
Yeah. I mean, once
the contract is signed, you
they
vote on it,
agree,
right?
I don't know how this controversy came up that Danny was negotiating with his cousin. It used to be the city council talked with the mayor. The mayor is the go-between.
Correct.
So everything Danny would bring to Tommy would be agreed to by the council. Maybe not 100%, but they would be in agreement to move forward. So I got a kick out of that when I heard that one going around the city, but that's politics and law.
Well, it's interesting because it didn't even look like, to me, it didn't look like a contract negotiation. They basically said, okay, this is what we've been doing. This is the step increase.
It's an extension.
This is the percentage. And then so how much negotiating was there even done? It was
Really?
From my understanding, nobody asked for something outrageous. Nobody asked for a cut. It was basically, let's just take whatever we're doing in 3 years, same terms exactly. And that was what the mayor said last week when he was in here with both the
I felt
mayors.
bad for Danny, because they're related. But it wasn't, Danny's trying to take care of his cousin. It's nothing like that. And the council discusses this, and then they move on. They give it, if they said we're just going to extend the current contract, and Danny went in and said, we're going to give you 5% more, now you got a problem. But that didn't happen.
All right. We're chatting with Marty Lorrey, former Lowell City Councilor. He's our guest on today's Daily Pulse. Mondays with Marty, as we like to call him when he's here. We'll continue our discussion, take a peek at the school committee, because from what we're hearing out there, both Marty and I, that it's going to start to explode in terms of a budget controversy with the schools. We'll give you some details on that.
I gave you those details last January. It was a prediction.
You predicted it, and you won again. It came out right. First, let me thank my Daily Pulse sponsors. Of course, Ray Booten, licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. You can find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. We're here in the WellPoint studios, and at WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thank you as well to Washington Savings Bank, banking that feels like home. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in Greater Lowell through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City. We talked a little bit about the Pirates to kick off today's Daily Pulse. Tomorrow, our Inside the Pirates podcast will feature their new head coach. Yeah, they got a new head coach. Was 5 games into the season. Tom Menace, he'll join us on Inside the Pirates. Meanwhile, Marty Lorrey is joining us here. All right, before we get into the school budget issues, school committee race. Not a single district challenger's name has come forward. In terms of the at-large, the 2 at-large council seats, Connie Martin has told us she is seeking re-election.
Yep.
Jackie Doherty has told me that she has not made up her mind. She will wait for budget season to go through and then make a declaration. Right. But I am hearing from multiple sources that she is going around telling people that she is done. And so that would open up a seat. Our friend Danielle McFadden, next door, Greater Lowell Chamber of Commerce, she's already declared.
She's been.
Speaking of money,
she did very well.
I think she's up to 16,000 and still going. That if that makes a difference in a citywide race, that helps. Bob Hoey has not responded yet to me, but keeps saying on City Life, the public access show there, that he is indeed running for an at-large seat. Yeah. There's another rumored candidate. So we still may have, depending on what Jackie Doherty and Elkin Montoya decide to do, we may have a preliminary on the at-large race for school committee. But again, the districts.
I haven't talked to Elkin in a long time. Last time I saw Elkin, and I like him, he's a great guy. I saw him at a restaurant, and I know he was thinking of running then, he asked me. And I think people should run.
Why not in the districts? Last time, only one person faced a challenger. And ironically, that challenger, Freddie Bahu, won, being an incumbent. But the other 3 ran unopposed.
It was funny. I went to a fundraiser for Johnny Dakota that year. And I saw Freddie and Mike Dillon. We were all talking. And I said, so who's going to run from the Highlands? And they're looking at me. I says, Eric Itchy is running citywide. Johnny Dakota's running. 2 popular guys. The turnout is going to be so big in the Highlands. One of you guys would be any Highland candidate would be difficult to beat. And there was a good school committee woman over in Pawtuckaville. She was doing great. And I did the debates for the Pawtuckaville neighborhood group. And there's very good candidate. But again, turnout was going to be so big. I said, one of you guys, or whoever runs in the Highlands, is going to have a huge advantage. And Bahu grabbed it. It's like that year, the first year. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. She was a school committee from downtown. Hillary
Clark.
Hillary Clark. And I said, I predicted she would get beaten. And on the election night, too, I really pushed it. The young lady running out of Centerville.
Eileen Del Rossi.
Eileen Del Rossi. I said the turnout in Centerville is going to be so big in the Corey Robinson, Bob Gignac race. They're just going to look, Centerville, boom, and they're going to hit the ballot. And both of those things came true. And that's why I say when we look at this election, especially in the general election, that turnout in Belvedere for that election could be a game changer if someone runs citywide. That could be the game changer.
So why the school side is so fascinating to me and the lack of candidates is I've called up the election calendar for the city of Lowell. So nomination papers are released Tuesday, June 10th.
Yeah.
You have to return them with your signatures by Tuesday, July 22nd. So today's May 5th, less than 2 months. Now then, what's brewing underneath, and it's going to come to the surface in the next week or two. There's a major budget crisis on the school side.
Yeah.
Depending on who you talk to, the schools are short either $3 to $5 million, somewhere in that ballpark. That call's going to have to wait. And my indication is there is no appetite on the city side to fund that gap because basically the indication I'm getting is the school department budget exploded with ESSER funding, and now that ESSER funding is going away.
Gone.
Much like the ARPA money is now gone.
Right.
And the school department's going to have to figure out what to do with all those extra positions and extra programs that were put in place with the ESSER funding. And, so $3 to $5 million, that's a lot of cuts if they decide to start seeping into the classroom. That'll fire up people. However, this final decision may not be made until what, June 30? June 27, June 30? That leaves you, if you're a school committee candidate, you now have like 3 weeks to get out there and try to mount the campaign and start going through.
Well, I give Danielle credit. You know, we're talking about a $5 million. Who in their right mind wants to put their name on there and face a $5 million? I give Danielle all
somebody who wants to have some input on that decision,
and she has some input, and she has kids in the school. She raised $15,000. I don't know how much you're going to have to spend to win a race on the school committee, but you know, hold on to that money. You might want to run for state. She's a great candidate, so she might want to run for state rep someday too. So you could just transfer that money.
All right, but first, she needs to get elected to the school committee. Let's not anoint.
Pangie did.
Are we anointing her?
Well, no, Pangie ran for the school committee, if you remember
correct.
right,
and went to
and
state
then he
rep.
went to state rep. The state rep races. Well, now it's a little bit different. We have neighborhood representation. You needed less votes to win a state rep race than you did
a citywide race.
A citywide race, yeah. It was much shorter. And
so depending on how those budget cuts go in the school side, will that spur some challengers to maybe get in?
No.
Will there be some parent
who wants to jump into that? No, seriously.
So you're thinking it'll still be
I mean, you really have to be dedicated
races.
to education to want to take that on. We haven't even talked about the Trump cuts coming yet.
Oh, they're coming.
They're coming. And so when we haven't even talked about education cuts from the Trump administration. You look at nationwide, the Secretary of Education, the budget cuts they're looking at there, what is it, 25, 30% goes to the classroom? It's when people, they're opening a lot of eyes, and that's why there's such a blowback against Doge. And if I forget what percentage goes to the classroom. I remember they hired a superintendent of schools here, and he spent $1 million in the first month, and none of it went to the classroom. I bumped into Mike Earl and Paul Georges. I said, "Do you believe this? $1 million went to salary, and it's not even touching the classroom."
Well, that's that's the ultimate battle. There's going to be some hard decisions that are going to have to be made here, and if that school committee starts approving cuts that hit the classroom as much as the administrative offices, you're going to have some upset parents.
I'll tell you. You look at now. Give Connie credit and all the others on the school committee, Dave. You look at the packet they get every week and what they take home to work on compared to the city council, the school, and ask Kim Scott. The school committee works harder, I believe, than the city council. They don't get the notoriety. They don't get the big TV audience. Mm-hmm. But school committee works very hard, and
they're also representing two districts. Whereas if you're a district councilor, you've got your own district, but a school committee person, I should say, has to double up. Is that perhaps why you're not seeing as many district school committee candidates over the last two cycles? They
couldn't get into the meetings. Jerry Nutter showed up at the meeting when they were talking, and they threw him out. You know,
he also wrote a comment. It's still up there on InsideLowell.com, by the way, where he said there's certain things that you can do if you're a city council candidate or a city councilor that you can't do if you're a school committee candidate.
It's amazing. It really is amazing, and. So we're sitting here talking about a $5 million deficit. If you have any hopes of a political career, who wants to jump into that fire? Really, you don't want to get any part of that, especially if you want to run for state rep or whatever down the line. You're young enough to. That's going to be a brutal fight.
Well, I admire anybody who gets in and puts their name on a ballot.
I do too.
You know, it's a thankless undertaking.
I think Danielle's a great candidate. But like I say, I think she could go state rep down when Rodney decides time's up. I think she'd be a fabulous candidate. And I don't know. It's really, I can't see anyone jumping in as this story unfolds to take that on.
All right. One more election-related thing before we hop on down to Washington, D.C., which, as we're seeing, affects Lowell and everywhere else. But the election subcommittee met last week. And I watched that meeting this morning before coming on with you, because it's on the city council agenda. So there's a lot of changes coming, I think, from what it sounds like in polling locations, according to Will Rosenberry. So all these decisions are still pending the election commissioners vote and then ultimately council approval. But at the same time, they're working on alternate locations for Lowell High School. Yeah. They're also looking at Lowell High School having an alternate location within the high school. There might be some other area, so they may not have to leave Lowell High School. They can maybe move to, I think the auditorium was specifically mentioned, or one of the new auditoriums.
That's Wayne Janessa's area too, you know, and
they're talking about maybe, and also the high school, they talked about the high school hosting two different areas, two different districts, because part of the acre votes in the high school as well. So they're talking, you know, can they alleviate some of that and put it into the senior center? Can they find other schools? They're also now seeing some changes within the Morey School. Instead of doing it in the Morey School cafeteria, maybe a different part of the Morey School. Yeah. They discussed that. They talked about eliminating the charter school up on Middlesex Street as a potential voting location. So they, you know, and then ultimately what was, by the end of the meeting, elections director Will Rosenberry was talking about increasing the number of polling locations in total. So you could have a handful of changes. And one thing we know is voters don't like to have their polling locations changed. Now, some hate their existing polling location and want to see a change, but the more you change with every election cycle or whatever, the more kind of confusion you get. Yeah. So there's a very delicate balancing act here that.
And then the advocates come out after they want these changes or they're against these changes. You find someone, I showed up to vote and I couldn't, you know? And so whether you advocate for or against it, there's always going to be issues. What I'd like to see the city do is really look in the city of Boston. Last election, they were looking at the boundaries again they were told they can't use race as a qualifier for the election. Do you remember that decision out of federal?
I do, yes.
And I'd like to see the city go back. And not that I care about the polling locations, but I think it would be good.
The districts?
Well, I think it would be good that the city council and others, the election commission, could draw the districts. Right now, you only have, one person in the city or two that filed that lawsuit, and you can't do anything, from what I understand, without the okay. I'd like to see them go back to court, get control of the elections here for the city, and the city council and the election commissioners. Let them do their work.
Well, it's interesting because you had a decree from the federal government and a court ruling that said you can't use race as a factor.
Boston, that was
in Boston, correct.
Right.
Which you would think sets the precedent for other communities,
That's
right?
What I think, yeah.
In Lowell, though, you have a judge's ruling that's in place that says you must have two majority-minority districts.
Right.
Or minority-majority. So you've got contradicting legal rulings here. Does Boston have the same thing? Did Boston have to create minority-majority districts?
I was following it and a little. And then all of a sudden that ruling came down, and I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to practice being an attorney. That I did read the story, but I said this could open up Lowell to come back and say, you know, the city council, we want to take control of the election here in the city. We want our election commission to take control of the city. Let's look into a lawsuit. And I would get.
Do you think this council has the appetite to fight that battle?
You're going to have to hire someone. You're going to have to hire someone who specializes in elections to really fight it. The last great attorney that I remember who was really good on elections was Attorney Sullivan.
Arthur Sullivan.
Yeah, he was excellent. I used to see him. I used to see Eddie Kennedy and his friends on Friday night, a great group of people, and he was always there. But he was the last great attorney from this area that I remember was Attorney Sullivan. So you're going to have to hire someone to get your feedback in.
I don't think the council wants to tackle that yet. Who knows? It could be a future issue, but imagine bringing that one back onto the table.
They're
right?
going to have to do it before another court ruling comes in, because you hire an attorney, he's got that ruling now to go into federal court with. So you're going to have to do it. The only reason why I don't care about precincts and this and all the other stuff, I just would like to see the city council look at it, because it would give them control, along with the election commission here in the city, of the elections.
All right. By the way, all these potential election location changes, and one thing I didn't really hear much of at that election subcommittee meeting, although I didn't see the last couple of minutes, was any talk about where the ballot drop box is going to be, and where are they going to do the early voting? Will it be the senior center or somewhere else? So there's a lot of things to be decided. Oh, and again, September 9th preliminary, May 5th today, you're talking less than 4 months for all these decisions to be made, and then to get the notice out, in multiple languages, and then make sure all the voting right advocates are happy as well.
Right, and
it's going to be really interesting. The logistics of this election might be more interesting than the actual races themselves.
I don't always agree with the advocates, but I really appreciate what they do. They put a lot of time in, and I appreciate watching people advocate for a cause. I always did. And then another factor, the Supreme Court will be making some decisions before the end of June.
What a wonderful segue, because besides local politics and, of course, making predictions, putting on your Swami hat, your other passion is the United States Supreme Court.
Love watching it.
And the rulings that they make. I always talk to you this is the time of year, May through June. The session ends June 30th.
Then they go out.
There's a million, every single day, there's another case being filed against the Trump administration, an injunction and this and that. Is this Supreme Court gonna have to rule once and for all on some of these cases and try to put a stop to a certain level of judges ruling on national issues? Or is this something that, because we're hearing talk that perhaps the House of Representatives has to step forward and start to say and pass some kind of pass legislation that says, if you want to put in a nationwide injunction, you got to go to a level higher than your smaller courts.
It was interesting this year because they brought Stephen Breyer out of retirement, who I thought was, he was more liberal and moderate, but he came out of retirement. He's sitting back in court. They're saying Donald Trump can't do this. It's against the Constitution. What Donald Trump has done, which someone hasn't done in a long time, is fight for presidential powers. And the Congress has been doing it, and the Senate have been fighting for congressional powers for years. The Supreme Court has fought for there's 3 branches. And to me, Donald Trump has done nothing more than to advocate for the power of the presidency. He's trying to bring it back.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think we're seeing with each passing president more executive orders, and I think the numbers bear that out, right? Trump more than Biden, Biden more than Trump 1, Trump more than Obama, Obama more than Bush, etc. But it's funny because there's one national narrative that, fighting for presidential powers and making all these executive orders is authoritarianism.
Right.
How many times have you heard we're becoming Nazi Germany, right?
You have Bernie Sanders and AOC traveling around the country in a private jet, arguing against all.
Yeah, but they're using electric jets, aren't they?
It's so ridiculous in this country right now. But I think you're right. Congress is going to have to step in.
Or the Supreme Court is. At some point, Justice Roberts is going to have to come down, try to get those 9 bodies together and come up with a ruling that says, listen, there's a process, there's a procedure. If you're going to shut down a presidential authority or if there's an issue of the Constitution, you can't have a judge at a lower level court making that. It's got to go either to a circuit court or it's got to go to the Supreme Court. You can't have what's happening now where you have, there are literally hundreds of lawsuits out there. At some point that has to stop.
They hunt attorneys and they hunt circuits.
Correct.
So you go where you think you're going to win.
Correct. Whereas Massachusetts has done it. Massachusetts has filed a number of actions as well.
And they go to different circuits. the mistake I think Trump makes is talking about impeaching judges. And Supreme Court Justice Roberts has been very strong. You don't impeach judges. You may disagree with them, but you don't impeach them. And I agree with Roberts. I think Trump's made a mistake talking about impeaching these people. Roberts gave a couple of speeches, and he might have done a paper on the number of threats against district, state, and federal judges the past couple of years. It's becoming to the point where they're being threatened. Their
somebody
families are
tried
being
to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh.
Right.
I didn't hear a lot of outcry from one side.
Right. Oh, no. And this is the problem. These things get so heated up, and judges, and I don't care if they're liberal, you don't, conservative, you don't threaten a man's life and his family's life because of a ruling. The system is, you don't agree with it, you push it up the ladder. But we'll see what the Supreme Court does decide on as far as elections are concerned. The thing to watch with the Supreme Court, and I love watching this, you might have a 5-4 decision. And what you really watch for, and I learned this in college, and who writes the decision. If the Supreme Court justice says, we don't want this changed, you're going to have a strong writer on it, Thomas Rayalo. If it's a ruling that's 5-4, one of the justices may not agree with it, but he'll agree to it because it's going to go to someone like Kavanaugh and someone newer, whose writing skills aren't as strong. So it will come back. It's an interesting thing to read about. If the liberal side is going to have something, they're going to get 5 votes, and they have done it with Kavanaugh. And you want Kagan to write it. She's probably the best Supreme Court justice on that side, and she's a strong writer. I think she's great, even though I don't agree with her a lot. But see who writes the decisions.
Interesting. Speaking of judges, as a Wisconsin judge in hot water.
Another prediction.
Well, you said it. Yeah,
someone's going to jail.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened in Massachusetts yet. I'm still waiting for Mayor Wu in Boston.
I thought it would be a mayor, attorney general, but it was a judge.
But she is charged with escorting an illegal wife beater, an illegal immigrant who was in there for domestic assault, and escorting him out the back door, knowing that there were ICE agents in there to get the judge.
He's a victim.
That judge has been arrested.
Yeah,
and she's facing federal charges. She also, the Wisconsin State Supreme Court, took her off the bench until this is settled. This happened in Massachusetts, as people lost their minds over this, as if it was, oh my God, I can't believe this is what we've come to. This happened in 2019 here in Massachusetts. But a judge did the exact same thing. I'm drawing a blank on her name.
I am too.
Her case, next month, her case is going to finally be heard. But she's been allowed to sit on the bench in Massachusetts while waiting for this process to play out.
It's almost like the state really hasn't done anything. But if you picked up on a story recently, the Judicial Committee in Massachusetts is charging her also. Yeah. So, you read these things about attorneys, and they have their own group. And when I saw that they're going to charge her themselves, I said, that's great. You can see that they have standards that they're going to live by.
But again, is this something where the Supreme Court's got to step in and issue something a little bit more solid that sets precedent that these judges that are doing this, they're gone. If you're found guilty or
they won't step in on that. They'll let the states do it. That's up to the states. If the states want to fire the judge and arrest the judge, now in a case like that,
so that's a states' rights issue.
It's a states' rights issue.
Breaking a federal immigration law.
But that's federal there. Once you go against the ICE group, those are federal agents.
You've committed a federal crime then,
right?
Which is what that Massachusetts judge did,
right? They can charge you too. So not only the state but the feds, and those are federal laws that they're breaking. So the feds will charge them too.
All right. I want to leave you with this one thing that I don't think the Supreme Court's going to have to rule on this time, but I think next year this will be a big issue. So it won't affect Lowell's election, but Donald Trump has been talking behind the scene well, not behind the scenes, but kind of underneath the headlines. It's kind of been lost because there aren't any national races in 2025. There are in 2026.
Right.
He's talking about an election day and what the Constitution and what the United States Congress has said about setting an election day.
Right.
One day, the first Tuesday in November, unless the first Monday hasn't happened yet. So early voting, mail-in voting. Now, I think mail-in voting may be allowed up until 8 p.m. or poll close on election day. Some of these states that are counting votes into Friday and maybe even later, California, Washington, Oregon, others, that the Trump administration is saying, no, no, no. Early voting, they're also saying, no, 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 no. Election day is Tuesday. I think that's going to come to a head. And ultimately, I think the United States Supreme Court, by the end of June 2026, is going to have to decide how we're going to do our elections.
And that's
forward.
a good place for it, because right now everyone's running from it because it's very popular. People can get a mail-in ballot. There's been some issues with them, too, and mail it in. It is popular. But
it's popular, but if the United States Constitution and if the law of the land says,
that's why the court should have
it is determined that there is a Congress or whatever sets an election day, and that is the day. Now you want to change, you want to get legislation. Good luck getting that legislation passed right now.
I think the courts are a good spot for that, because if it's a constitutional issue, that they're going to take care of that. But I like early voting. They've always had it if you're going to be out of town. Now, if you remember a couple of years ago, the state rep race, Dave Nangle and Vanna Howard, and there was one other person. Anyway, I had come into the studio that Monday or Tuesday, and I had the predictions of how many people would vote. And we got a hold of the election commissioner that morning, and the number of mail-in ballots and early voting was astounding.
That, of course, that was September of 2020, right? We're still in the midst of COVID.
But while we were on the air, I used the same formula I used, only with a bigger.
Right.
And I came within probably 100 votes on that election, on the prediction. But
5 years post-COVID, do we still need to have this level of
how many people voted in the
option?
last city council election?
Early voting?
No,
early
total.
in-person voting? No, yeah, 70.
It was the lowest ever.
7,600.
So, this is the argument I've had since we've gone into neighborhood representation, and you and I debated it on the air. It's not going to help. And once they get in, you're not going to knock them out. Now, we're going to see two this year that is very, very contentious. Paul Rathiem, he beat Dave Ouellette. Dave Ouellette lost that election when they took Moody Street off him. He lost at that point. He could not win that election. And I've argued that for years, and Paul Rathiem, who's a great guy, beat him. If Dave Ouellette, who was head of the CBA or president of CBA and very involved, had that Moody Street vote.
He's not with the CBA. He's
a coalition. Yeah, he was on the board.
On the board.
Too. Plus, he had the Action.
Yeah, he was more with the Acre Action Group or whatever.
But if he was able to keep Moody Street, he would have won that election. Have Dave come in. He'll go over it with you too.
We're trying to get Dave in on other matters.
Dave's a great guy.
Dave,
and but I said to Dave that year, you lost the election, and I think he knew it. And that's what this neighborhood representation, they're fighting. I mean, everyone talked about, Bob Hoey can't run in South Lowell because they put Stratham Street.
The sliver.
And Belvedere, But to me, the real issue that year was Dave Ouellette. And I think Patty Kerwin and Dominic Lay were at some of the meetings. There was some borders up in the Highlands that they didn't agree with, and I think Patty and Dominic were right. From what I remember, the debate. But Patty Kerwin, if she tells me something, it's gospel. I have that much respect for Patty Kerwin. But she and Dominic had a debate up there, and I think they were right.
All right. We'll end it there. Marty Lorrey, Mondays with Marty. Always interesting.
Always fun.
Always fun. All right, we'll get you back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Things will start to develop, and by that point, the whole school versus city budget battle will will be a
And the
fully
Belvedere,
ablaze.
more people are knocking doors. The candidates will be out being seen. And
Has your door been knocked yet?
no,
Not yet?
Not me, no.
Guys, Marty Lorrey's out there. Go knock on his door.
I have a lot of voters in my neighborhood. I feel neglected. I cut the grass yesterday before the rain, hoping they'd come by, and I haven't seen
I
anyone.
haven't seen him yet.
The one guy you always see is Vezna. Vezna always has a drop. Vezna's campaign does a lot of work on drops, and they're really active.
All right.
So,
Thank you, Marty. Thank all of you for joining us as well here on the Monday edition of the Daily Pulse, the Monday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo Daily Pulse. Tomorrow we're going to be joined by Greg Pappas, the aforementioned Greg Pappas, former City of Lowell Elections Director. We'll talk a little bit about the election changes that will be coming to the City of Lowell. We'll talk about national issues. We'll talk about state issues. We talk about everything with Greg.
can I come back?
You want to come back?
Well,
Come on back with Greg. That'd be a great discussion.
I had Greg
the
on
two of you, I'll just
Saturday.
sit back and listen.
Oh, I called Asa Stutz this morning. I said, when Greg comes back, because we were talking off air about, we talked about the Kennedy assassination of Robert Kennedy, the second gunman. A lot of people never picked up on that story.
Yeah, they were too busy focused on the JFK one to realize there was another conspiracy.
We get into that Saturday, but with Trump opening up Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and it should be an interesting discussion.
All right.
I'll let you sign off.
All right. So Greg Pappas tomorrow, former Mayor Bill Samaras on Wednesday. I don't know what I got for you yet on Thursday, but we'll have Batch and Mick, Batch and the Hyphen, as we like to call them, on Fridays, the Pod Squad. So we got a full week here on Inside Lowell. A number of other podcasts will be dropping as well. We've got stories on the website, InsideLowell.com. Inside Lowell, as we like to say, if Lowell is your home, this is your place. Till next time, everybody stay safe, stay dry on this rainy Monday, and I'll catch you Tuesday on the other side.